I
Oh,
cover
that
things,
is not
like,
like
if you don't want me to cover.
Look
a
at,
few other things
like,
about
how
the
this
building,
is-
like capacity fees.
I'd like to welcome you all here today and call to order this special joint board meeting for Tuolumne Utilities District. Judy, would you like to go ahead and?
Yes, I will call the meeting of Jamestown Sanitary District to order at 10 a.m.
Right on.
on the button.
Okay, and Judy, would you lead us in the pledge to the flag, please?
Certainly. I
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Judy. Okay, I got a couple of housekeeping items here for everybody. We all have microphones. We have to share them. We don't have enough for everybody, so be sure that the green light is on. The button there is turns it on and off, so otherwise we won't be able to hear you. Okay, before we go any further, I'd also like to do some introductions here. So if we'll just go around the room. Ron, why don't you start?
Okay, Ron Reagan, TUD board member.
Jeff Kearns, TUD board member and current board president.
Barbara Balin, TUD director.
David Boatwright, TUD director.
Glenn Jacobs, TUD Director.
Jill McClintock, administration supervisor, district secretary for JSD.
Rebecca Miller Cripps, JSD Director.
Duke York, JSD Director.
John Robbins, JSD Director.
Judy Selby, JSD Director.
Allison Fruya, district engineer for Jamestown Sanitary.
Nick Rivera, operations supervisor and chief plant operator.
Carolyn Higgins, TUD Finance Director.
Abby Parkon, TUD Administrative Services Director.
Eric Hall, operations director, TUD.
Eric Johnson, District Engineer, TUD. Don Perkins, TUD General Manager. Thank you.
Okay, we also have Jesse Barton, TUD Council is online with us too. Jesse, are you there?
I am. Good morning, everybody. Nice to meet you.
Okay, with that, I'm going to turn this over to Mr. Perkins.
I'll read out the item.
Okay, the first item on regular business, overview of the current agreement between Jamestown Sanitary District and Tuolumne Utilities District. And additional discussion topics such as A, description of types and levels of wastewater treatment and inflow infiltration. B, JSD I&I, lack of capacity and non-tertiary effluent impacts on TP. C, TUD upgrade to tertiary treatment impact on JSD, and D, partnership opportunities.
Okay, good morning, everybody. It's great to see everybody. It's been a long time since we've had a joint meeting with JSD and TUD. I think it was in 2019 or 18 the last time we did. So long ago, that I don't remember. Maybe I wasn't a part of the meeting. Probably should have been, but I just don't recall it. But anyways, we've been discussing, I know, Judy, we've been discussing having this meeting for well over a year.
Yes.
And you know how life takes a hold of us and takes us in all kinds of directions before we can get control and have this meeting. So I'm really thankful and appreciative of the opportunity to have this joint meeting. I want to again say, I've said this at your board meetings, I've said it from our board meetings, we have a very good relationship between the two districts. Our staff works very, very well together. We communicate very well together. We exchange ideas and information freely and frequently, and it's just a wonderful working relationship, and we just want to recognize that.
Dawn, excuse me, Judy has something she wants to say.
Yes, I would just like to say, I am really grateful for this meeting. Over the years or months, there has been misinformation or misunderstandings. And, you know, my hope is that this is an opportunity for everyone in this room to leave today with a better understanding of the challenges that each agency faces. And I thank everyone for being here.
Great, thank you.
Thanks, Judy.
So a little bit more of the housekeeping. our board has a policy that the meeting won't go past 3 hours unless there's a consensus of the board to move beyond that. So if we get to the 2 hour and 45 minute mark and it seems like we're not going to finish it up in 15 minutes, I'll have to take a straw poll of the board, see if they want to continue. But we do have, it's just one item. It's just these few things, but it really is, it's open discussion. If I have a request of all of the board members, right, is to don't go away without asking a question. If you have a concern, a thought, or a question about anything, please feel free to ask. We don't get together very often, so this is the one time in a few years we've gotten together. So let's make sure that we answer all those questions. And I will say that if by chance an elephant finds its way in this room, let's identify the elephant and get him out of the room, okay? Because we have a lot of work to do on behalf of both of our constituents, and it's really important that we work together and make progress. So with that, I will open it up. The first item that was requested, I think by Jamestown, was to have a description of the types and levels of wastewater treatment. Now, I'm not a wastewater treatment plant operator, although I think I could answer this question plainly, but with Nick or Director Boatwright or somebody want to give a shot at given a layman's term of the different types of treatment, especially we have primary, secondary, and tertiary.
Yeah.
Nick, I think Nick is our expert.
So secondary treatment, which I believe you guys were, and we are as well, is a process. I mean, there's different plants, different ways to treat it, but the end product is secondary chlorination to kill microorganisms, total coliforms, and tertiary treatment basically is a higher treatment of that, where there's a further filtration that basically cleans the water further and drawing blank.
That put you on the spot. I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
Thanks, Don. And then primary is I'm not super familiar with like how.
Well, I think again, from a layman's standpoint, for me, Director Boatwright is going to correct me when he needs to. David spent, 30 years here at the district doing just this, so he is the resident expert here. So, but primary treatment is where we remove everything that comes into the sewer that shouldn't have been in the first place. Watches, socks. Dolls. If it's something that got in the sewer that shouldn't be there, we're gonna get that out of there. I think that's the first part of the primary treatment. Okay, and then there is the process of where you might separate the stuff that floats and the stuff that sinks that was supposed to be in the sewer, or it finds its way in the sewer. That's sort of a basic description of primary treatment. Secondary treatment is more of a biological chemistry process where the organics that are supposed to be in the sewer are decomposed and changed from a more of a contamination to an inorganic, less contaminated fashion, right? And then those two things come of that. That's the effluent water that goes one way and the solids that go another way. That's the secondary part of the treatment. Now, there's lots of ways to do that, but we shouldn't get into that today. Then there's tertiary, which is the third part of tertiary, stands for third part of the treatment, where in most cases, if not all cases, some sort of a filtration process. There are many types of filtration processes, but that's the tertiary. And then whether or not you disinfect that water heading out to wherever it's going to be disposed of, it can be chlorinated or disinfected in some manner. Is that close enough?
Pretty close. A little conversation about tertiary treatment. It's not, there's multiple phases and different ways to go about it. It depends on the constituent that you're trying to remove from the wastewater stream, which could be an organic or an inorganic, or any thing that the water is carrying with the in-stream. And the difference would be an organic would be the removal of nitrogen from the waste stream to reduce the burden on the downstream process. Most wastewater treatment plants discharge to receiving waters, which means further up in the original part of the stream you are, the cleaner your water source is, and you're cleaning your wastewater and putting back into the receiving waters. What is unique about Jamestown Sanitary District and Tuolumne Utilities District, we're 100% recycled, which means we do not discharge back to receiving waters. So our level of treatment goes into where we're going to use the water. And for our historical, to our history to this point has been agricultural land reuse or land application of the wastewater. I think in recent years, our reclamation system has shown that it needs a little bit of improvement. We have some groundwater degradation in certain areas. The study is ongoing. I know during my last tenure as superintendent for Tuolumne Utilities District, we installed more groundwater monitoring wells in the reclamation system. And that study is ongoing. I think our final groundwater limitations have been set. Continuing into tertiary treatment for nutrient removal. We'll go forward to improve the groundwater underneath the sites that are land applied. The other side of tertiary treatment could be metals removal, which our incoming wastewater stream does not or no longer contains metals. The water department changed from zinc orthophosphate to polyorthophosphate, which eliminated our zinc contamination, which in years past, because the wastewater treatment plant had no way to remove the zinc, it would just slip right through the treatment process. So wastewater treatment plants are designed for removal of the pollution that is in as far as a general description. I actually read the item as to a description of our individual wastewater treatment processes, which I'm, I'll kind of co-chair with Eric or Eric, whoever wants to take the lead on that for us, and maybe you could describe Jamestown's treatment process.
Yeah. Want me to go first? Okay, so Jamestown, we have a package plant essentially, and it goes through a selector tank, and it's basically activated sludge plant. So it goes through selector tank into first stage aeration basins that are fine bubble. It goes through those to the second stages, which are large bubble or coarse bubble, and then from there to the clarifiers. The other process is it wastes from the first stage once a day into our digesters. From there, we remove the solids through our press, and those end up at the landfill. The clarifiers hold the water, and from there, the water leaves, goes to our secondary contact basin where it gets chlorinated, and it goes through different channels to slow the water down, and then out of that contact basin goes right out to courts.
What's that? So with that, just I'm trying to understand the audience. I want to make sure that the audience is hearing what the question was, and now is it answering the question. If there's any clarifying questions on the different types of treatment, you kind of heard Director Boatwright describe TUDs. We heard Nick describe Jamestown Sanitary Districts. Is there any questions that are coming about of that part of the discussion?
Barbara?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I kind of read the question as help us understand the two systems and maybe how they work together. Because I know we share quartz, but that's about all I know. So that would be very helpful to clarify how we actually work in partnership and commingle our stormwater et cetera, and our wastewater.
Anybody? Give it a shot.
Sure.
Okay, all right, I'll try.
Otherwise, I'll just talk all day. We have other people in the audience that have been here a lot longer, that were around, when the system was being developed. But so our linkage, and how we interact goes back to the seventies. And I think the original agreement that we have between the two agencies went from 1973. And, what Director Balin was referring to is when the regional system was developed, literally regionalized. Twain Hart and TUD, which before that time was TRWD and Tuolumne County Water Agency number 2, and some of these other predecessor agencies to TUD, and Jamestown Sanitary District, they decided to collect the wastewater and build a new Sonora treatment plant. And Jamestown was going to stay with its own treatment facility. We were going to share the reclamation facility. So where our interaction is in the regional sewer committee is that we share the reclamation system. Now, TUD is the owner and operator of that system. But until recently, Jamestown's treatment plant alongside the highway and TUD's at its current location, they discharged to Quartz Reservoir. Quartz was built in the 70s. Even before then, there were discharges to creeks, but discharged to Quartz Reservoir, which was built in the 70s. It's about 1,400 acre feet, up to 1,600 acre feet with some of the improvements that TUD has done over the years. Jamestown's about 15% of the flow of the system. So our responsibility at TUD is to take that flow, store it, and then dispose of it. There were times when that disposal involved for TUD an MPDS permit, but by and large, the system has been a reclamation land-based system of about 600 acres, which you see when you drive down the highway. Some of the big users, which everyone knows, Gardella and Rosasco, but we have how many total? 19 or so? 19 or 20 users in the system, all ranging from really small, couple acres, all the way up to, say, 300 acres for the larger ones. And the system has to be operated such that we're able to contain all the flow and not spill into the creek. And we're able to empty the reservoir every year so that we can start a new year with enough storage to contain what we know is going to come from you folks and our plant, but also rainfall. And rain, as we know, can be very erratic. So it may be 15 inches one year and 50 inches another year, which means that we're stuck as TUD dealing with wide swings of inflow volume that we know we have to get rid of the following summer irrigation season. Where we're also connected is that, in addition to the agreements, is that the quality of the effluent that you generate goes into Quartz Reservoir, and one drop of your effluent, literally, that doesn't meet the waste discharge requirements that we have, essentially contaminates the reservoir. Now, we all know in common sense that doesn't really make very much sense, but that's the way the regulators look at it. And so when we've made upgrades to our facility like we have, and you've made upgrades to yours, we really need to come back and true up the water quality, because TED has waste discharge requirements related to land disposal, which is irrigation, and then we have a groundwater monitoring network. And on a quarterly basis, we have to sample and make sure that we aren't contaminating groundwater. I'm not sure if I'm covering the big picture there, but
No, it's really, it's really helpful to see how the two, and to even know that we have an agreement.
yes, and we've had 3 agreements with various amendments over the years. Oh, and I should say one other thing. Before Jamestown built its new facility, TUD, as the operator of the regional system, had a pump station at your old plant. So your effluent would be sent to the pump station, and it would be pumped through a force main, fancy term for just a pressure pipeline, to Quartz Reservoir. And TUD operated and maintained that system. Now that you have your new facility, that pump station has been deeded to Jamestown Sanitary District. You guys have built a new pump system, and that force main or that pipeline is now under your operation and maintenance responsibility because it feeds your new plant. And then you discharge out of your new plant through a new pipeline that comes into Quartz Reservoir. Sorry, there's no maps or anything, but I think most of you guys are familiar with where Quartz Reservoir is.
And just a short note of history. In the 70s, Tuolumne County was in a building moratorium because there were failing systems all over. There was Mona Village, Twin Heart. We were literally contaminating our ground. And when I look at this system, I see just innovative for the 1970s to build a system that collected from the 3 agencies and reclaimed the water. In the 70s, that was only happening maybe at East Bay Mud. So we had a unique and a wonderful system. I think it was 80% grant funded, and we have paid off the remainder that was through our tax bill. And I just think we have a great system. And I see Twin Heart, TUD, and Jamestown as the caretakers of that system. We're partners. And just to comment on the I&I, recently Jamestown got a grant. We were going to replace the force main that went from our old plant to the new plant. And with a suggestion from TUD, we looked into making a change and using that money to correct some of our I&I problems. And we haven't gotten the final sign off, but it's close. So, and I know that Twin Heart is really working on the I&I.
Director Reagan.
So, I guess my question is, when I was on the board, back a few years, TUD got sued by CalSPA. How does that fit in with our situation there at Quartz? Because it was my understanding that they just freaked out when they saw that we were applying the finished effluent to ground sources rather than putting it back into Woods Creek or some other stream.
You're bringing up an interesting.
Turn your mic, there you go.
And that's an interesting subject based on how the state and some of the regulators actually look at Tuolumne County in the fact that Tuolumne City Sanitary District, TUD, JSD, we actually incorporate a reuse of near 100% of our effluent. We don't discharge back to receiving water, so we're actually looked upon as a delta stressor because we take water from the watershed, but we don't return it to the receiving waters. So it's kind of an interesting twist that the lawyers for clean water that applied a consent decree because the sanitary sewer overflows to TUD, they actually tried at one point to push us to full tertiary nutrient removal treatment process and put our water back into the environment or back into receiving waters via Woods Creek to Don Pedro and following downstream. So that's another subject. It never went that far. It was pretty, large scope encompassing. But it never got to the point of actually forcing us a treatment process change to discharge back to receiving waters.
So I guess, going along with that, a concern of mine would be then, just in watching over the past few years, we had a couple of, pretty good winters. And, I know that I could see, staff sweating profusely on trying to make sure that courts didn't overflow, but moving forward, how how's this all gonna work if we gave up the MPDES permit, which was really expensive to maintain, in order to go to all land application to take care of the finished effluent. But where do we go from here? I mean, if that thing overflows, we're gonna be in trouble. Is that not correct?
That would lead to some drastic reactions by regulatory authorities in the form of, stealing from our coffers, or, taking from our coffers.
Yeah, I think that's an excellent segue. And by the way, it's been a great discussion so far. I appreciate all the questions, and for me, it's going along as methodical in the right direction. Makes sense to me. So there's a couple of caveats about this lawsuit in the consent decree, right? So the district had to fork over several $100,000 at the conclusion of as soon as the decision was made, the district had to fork over several $100,000s to these people. Nicely put. We also, as part of the consent decree, and David, Director Boatright, was around for 100% of this. He was front and center and knows this better than I do, but the district also was required to spend X amount of hundreds of thousands of dollars per year, 4 or 5 years, for a total of X amount of millions of dollars as one of the things that we needed to do as a result of the consent decree. Well, the district far and away exceeded the amount of money that we were required to spend, both through ratepayer dollars and grants. We pursued major grants, more than $1 million worth of grants, a CDBG grant for work to be done on the collection system in the Gibbs area. And then we've subsequently, and in addition to that, spent many millions and millions of dollars on our own collection system. Yes, in reaction to the consent decree, the lawsuit, but it was a wake-up call. What I'm about to say is Don's opinion and just my words. This isn't how the district feels. This is just how I feel, and I'm the general manager, so it carries a little bit of weight. My opinion is, at that time of the lawsuit, in the early 2010, 12, 13, somewhere around there, I wasn't a part of the sewer part here at TUD. I was in water only, water treatment only. I felt like by the time I got involved in 2015 and 16, got my head above water, I felt like society as a whole really didn't treat wastewater with the same level of respect that they did for the water treatment. It's just sewer. It's just wastewater. They're fine. Well, no, they deserve the level of, wastewater treatment deserves the same level of respect as drinking water, right? If we're going to be responsible, we need to pay attention. And that consent decree woke TUD up in more ways than one. And so subsequently, like I said, we've spent millions and millions of dollars aggressively attacking our collection system to improve sanitary system overflows and to reduce I&I. One of the very first things I had to do about 3 years into my tenure as operations manager is we got so much rainfall into our systems collectively that courts filled very fast. We got a late start to the irrigation season the previous year, and an early end to the reclamation system, and then a heavy rainfall. We actually had to go out there and build a 2-foot dam or 2-foot high dam by however many feet. So that we can retain an extra 110 or so acre feet. So we wouldn't actually have to release water out of courts. This is years after we just rescinded our NPDS permit, or at least got rid of our NPDS, because we made all these improvements, including a couple $1 million in court itself to deepen the pool at which we can pump water out of. And I hope I'm making sense. I'm going off fast, but just trying to impress upon you that because of this, the lawsuit, the consent decree, the district really responded in an appropriate manner and spent millions of dollars, both grant and ratepayer dollars, to take care of our end of the issue. That's pretty much what I wanted to.
Duke, you got a question?
Protection of surface waters is, primary to all of our concerns. And I wanted, one of the things that we did, we had a treatment plant down by Woods Creek. I mean, the old treatment plant was right there at Woods Creek, and we received, this was ahead of what you were doing to down for your replacing your treatment plant. But we received a water quality grant to basically pick up a portion of our sewage treatment facility and move it out there closer to Quartz Reservoir. And it was done, again, as a water quality grant to avoid the potential for a spill into Woods Creek. But grants, unfortunately, when you get a water quality grant, they didn't allow us to increase capacity. So it's important to note that when we moved the plant, we moved it and it was secondary at that time. And we moved it down there and it became secondary. Subsequent to that, you guys went and had your plant updated to tertiary. So it kind of, in the state regional water quality control board, they could have said, no, if you're going to upgrade to tertiary, but they didn't. Because it was okay to dispose of secondary into Quartz Reservoir, and we, everything was working well at that time. But here we are today, and we are working diligently as our number one primary focus is to upgrade our plant to tertiary. We have a secondary issue that is of interest to the community, and that is capacity. But, right now, the tertiary part is our focus. That is our number one emphasis at this time.
Barbara?
Yeah, this is quite interesting, Duke, because rumor in the community is, well, why didn't they expand when they got this grant? And what you are saying, what I'm just hearing you say right now, is you got a water quality grant that did not include tertiary or capacity enhancements. And when was that?
Letter.
Okay. So the grant started with a planning grant back in 2013.
Okay.
And then the process led to design and then construction that finished around 2021. I wanted to hit upon the concern, going back to the concern about how we don't have a surface water discharge and overtopping courts. These water reclamation systems that depend on land discharge, they're designed for a 100-year rainfall condition. So that's one protective measure that the state requires in the design to help reduce the possibility of overtopping your reservoirs. And so then the issue of the 100-year design, you're designing based on assumptions on how you discharge the water, so how much land you have available to irrigate. And then you're also looking at what water is coming in. And so the water coming in, you've got your base flow, and then you've got the inflow and infiltration. And so one way to keep the design of your reclamation system small as it can be, is to try to minimize the I&I. that is challenging because these systems are so old. They cover a wide area. And so you're trying to figure out where your I is coming from. And you will spend millions and millions of dollars. It's a moving target, basically. You basically want to have a regular plan to be replacing lines. And this has been a concern for JSD going back in the early 2000s. There was a large spill into Woods Creek. I can't remember the year. It's probably before 2010, maybe 2004. And, that was one of the starting points for looking at a new treatment plant, one of the reasons. But because of that large spill, JSD did recognize how I and controlling that is important. And they had been doing annual projects, replacement projects on lines. But because of the size of the district and all the different activities going on, you have to choose your focus. You have limited funds to deal with. And so there was a period of time where the focus changed to treatment, getting the new treatment plant built. The focus is still on I, but and that's why the REAP grant is, we're looking at refocusing that, where that money gets spent. But at this point, or for the past 10 years or so, it had been more looking at treatment. We had to put some of the collection system replacement projects aside to make sure there was enough funds for the treatment process.
Do we have for both sides, for, TUD's collection system as well as JSD's, do we have a newly apprised percentage of I? Has that been a comparison of?
The last time we did that was TUD did that, was just a basic comparison of what normal flows during the dry season. Well, I should back up and say, we haven't done a full-fledged I study. What we have done is looked at the flow we've received during the wet season in various rainfall years. And we've computed somewhere around 11-12% of the flow on a wet year. So when I say wet year, more than 32 inches of rain could be associated with I. And I think it's a lot of it is inflow versus infiltration, the two being like infiltration, things that are like usually groundwater, high groundwater coming into your pipes. We don't have really high groundwater here. We do have some lines next to creeks, but most of it's inflow coming in through manhole picks and clean outs and connections to gutters and roof drains. And our crews have been really diligent about installing dishes in the manholes, plugging the holes, the manhole pick holes, and other things to reduce that. And we have seen reduction in that. But short answer is around maybe 11% is the last time we looked at it.
11% is actually, within the guidelines of what would be anticipated for, annual flow coming from, Mother Nature. Is there anything for Jamestown as far as accountability or an account of how much inflow? And I can certainly see how shifting the grant from replacing a transmission line to a larger line, if you control your I, you don't actually need that other component.
And we would have a study of the I. It would identify those areas that needed to be improved, a priority, if you will. The other thing that Jamestown has done, because the system is old, we have identified, those folks who connected their storm drains into the system. We've also, and I can't recall the name of those manhole covers that restrict water. Nick, help me out.
Oh, mud, but we put mud dishes in. It's basically what TUD
Yes.
does as well.
Yes, so we've done that, but really important to this issue is going to be our ability to use that grant money to, number one, identify and create a priority list and then go about correcting.
I was going to mention one thing in 1978, beginning of my civil engineering career, I worked for a private consulting firm that did a storm drain in Jamestown in an effort to identify all the various sources of stormwater in Jamestown. We did something that they call smoke testing. We blew smoke up through, and what we found when we did that, first of all, it looked like Jamestown was on fire.
Yeah.
But the smoke would come out the pipes on the roof. And we knew that some of the some sewage and things were going into that storm drain. And that was clear back in 1978 when we did the Main Street Jamestown storm drain. And they've done subsequent storm drain systems that at least the county did. These were county initiated. They did at least 3 other storm drain projects in Jamestown in an effort to try to minimize those impacts. So having a storm drain system that collects that water is a good step in the right direction. I can't tell you the years of the other 2 storm drains, but one of them, both of them, I think I was the deputy director of public works at the time.
As far as looking at a percentage of I&I, there's various ways to do that analysis, and we could work with TUD on having a consistent way to analyze our flows. What JSD does is, as part of their annual report to the regional board, they compare average daily flow to average dry weather flow. And that depends on how much rainfall you had in a year. So the percentage difference varies. A couple of years, it's been almost the same. And a few years, it's been over 10% difference. So it would be good to have a consistent way to look at it so we can see where we both are.
So, you get a call on Eric here. One of the primary things that I think we wanted to do is overview of the current agreement between Jamestown Sanitary District and the Tuolumne Utility District. So with that, I think unless we've moved beyond, I don't think we have, at least not for me. I would like Eric to go over we're not going to go through the entire agreement but there are some key parts that primarily are why I feel like I'm here. What I want to go out of this, and again, I'll restate. I really, especially for all of the directors, I really think it's really important that we don't leave here without you. You must have had a reason for coming here. Some questions you had, please make sure we get it out on the table. But what Eric's about to go through might spur some questions, so wouldn't mind.
Okay, I don't want to put everybody to sleep, so, and we're not going to do a page turner, but we do have Jamestown's legal counsel and Jesse Barton, our legal counsel's online. So if there's any like real detailed questions, I'm just going to defer to them. But so I think I alluded to this before. In 1973, there was an agreement when the regional system was formed. At the time, it was between Jamestown and Tuolumne County Water District number 2, one of our predecessors. Then there was they rescinded that agreement and we executed a new one in 2005. And I'm not sure the genesis or reasoning for that, but the current governing agreement is from May of 2019. And my understanding is the reason this new agreement came about was for a couple reasons. Number one, it was a condition of your funding through the grant. So at the time, Patty Ingalls came to the district and said, you know, we need to get a new agreement. I have to have this in order to get the funding for the construction of your new plant. And by the way, because we're moving the plant and the pump station I spoke of before, the TUD operated and maintained in that force main was now going to become a property of Jamestown Sanitary District. So the agreement covered a couple of things, including transferring ownership, the deeds and whatnot, for those facilities to you. But the key points I think Dawn wants me to cover really are one, there's a couple mentions in there, section 1.1 and section 3, and they relate to water quality and level of treatment. So I'm just going to read it to you, better than paraphrasing. So level of treatment, and bear in mind, any agreement was always going to have these clauses in there. I mean, we weren't going to execute an agreement with you folks without something related to the quality of the wastewater and the level of treatment. And again, it was because you guys had to get the funding. So I don't know if you hadn't had that condition in your funding agreement, what this agreement would look like, or if it would just have been a transfer of assets, but eventually we're going to address level of treatment. And so this is in section 3. It says JSD shall treat all sewage delivered to TUD to whichever of TUD's waste discharge requirements is the strictest to the extent TUD determines it's necessary for TUD's compliance with its WDR, waste discharge requirement, in other words, our permit. Furthermore, TUD shall provide JSD 60 days written notice of any changes in TUD's WDR when it has determined that JSD will need to comply with the strictest WDR in order to meet TUD's strictest WDR. This is said multiple times. So it says, by way of example, if TUD's master reclamation system has one at WDR and TUD's other regional treatment plants have a separate WDR, then JSD must treat, including chlorination, to the stricter of the two WDRs if it is necessary for TUD's compliance with the WDR. That's a lot of words, but at the time we had 2 permits. We had the one related to the reclamation system, which was really governed by protection of groundwater that is through our quarter sampling of our groundwater monitoring wells. And then the other was the state's permit for our treatment plant. And we still do have 2 permits, but we have received a new permit for our treatment plant. We're still operating under our old reclamation permit, and we assume that will be issued. We will get a new coverage under the general order in the next 8 to 10 months. So this is really, I think, one of the primary reasons we're here, and Director York referred to it, is your priority being to upgrade to tertiary, and that's why we went through the levels of treatment and explanation of that. Our plant has real strict limits on the water quality coming out. Your plant does too, but they aren't the same. And so once it's in quartz, your effluent, which is say 15%, gets into quartz reservoir, everything we irrigate off quartz reservoir is impacted. And that unfortunately is about 2/3 of our acreage. So say 400 acres is below quartz. So we wouldn't be able to land apply in the same manner as we would if we were full tertiary and you folks were tertiary. Couple other, and I could stop if there's questions about that.
Okay, Mr. Perkins actually brought it up when an elephant walked in the room. Several. Okay. TUD is not out of compliance on either permit at the current time. JSD is not out of compliance on your permit this time. One of the things that will benefit the reclamation system is full-on tertiary treatment going into quartz reservoir. The elephant that walked in the room is land application to the golf course at Tulalip. But the other elephants that walked through the room are the dedicated ranchers that have reused, recycled water since 1978. The land at Tulalip Golf Course, which requires tertiary treated water because it's a public contact area, it has to be full on. You can put it back in an open air reservoir and then, you know, it's basically just raw water. You get a couple ducks landing on it or whatnot. It is no longer tertiary treated water. It's just basically raw water. Because it doesn't take much to recontaminate, you know, full on tertiary. That's why Jamestown's only partial tertiary treatment and discharge to Quartz Reservoir. That's the reason that we cannot go to the Tulalip Golf Course easily. It could be done on a more difficult way, which would be build a, you know, dedicated line from the Sonora Regional Wastewater Treatment Plant directly to or an off branch of the upper zone and then basically stop all water, you know, it'd have to be set up differently. So it's beneficial to Tuolumne Utilities District to have Jamestown Sanitary District, you know, go on full tertiary. And I think that should be the encompassing, you know, reason. All feelings and, you know, like Judy said, you know, there's been misconceptions over the years and I don't want to see us go into a misconception of, you know, not bringing up that use of that land. That land is equivalent to 300 acres of irrigation or thereabouts.
There's 80 acres in the first phase and then an additional 100 and something. There's a total of over 200 acres.
So if that land were actually available to receive water out of Quartz Reservoir, this year being, you know, a little bit beyond our normal fill point is not an issue. I mean, you know, the water's going up here, it's going to our ranchers. Where we get into a problem for me, because I worked 32 years with those ranchers. Knew all of them well, you know, worked through problems in different seasons, is, you know, those years that we have a drought condition where we are 20 inches of rainfall or below, there's no I&I impact as far an extra increase of water. There's still the demand on the reclamation system without the supply being there. So as a new, you know, user of the reclaimed water that the Tulalip Golf Course would be, is that overshadow somebody who has been dedicated through the years, had monitoring wells, had, you know, access, you know, that's all got to be sorted through.
What is the impact on those ranchers? You know, they had to pull teeth to get those people to take the water in 1970. Had to practically beat them up or hold a pistol to them. And what is the impact to those ranchers? I haven't heard anything or any comments from any of the ranchers. And a second part is tertiary treated water is one thing. You don't charge for it. Will you be charging for that, the ranchers, for that tertiary treated water? And another part of my question is the ranchers enjoyed water that was really full of nutrients. I mean, it really made that grass grow. What is the impact to them with tertiary treated water? So I think there's four questions there.
I want to address all of them, and if I missed something, anybody correct me where I'm wrong. And great question. Thank you so much for dragging that elephant in here. The elephant will get scolded and sent out of here if I have anything to do about it. So, first, the impacts to the ranchers. Oh, with the golf course water, right? You know, how are we going to solve that, or what's the impacts, right? In years when there's not enough water to go around. So going back to 1978, when Quartz was first designed and built and constructed, there was a water balance that was studied about the impacts to Quartz. It was determined back before the Quartz was built that there will be times, 5 out of 10 years, I believe I have that right. 5 out of every 10 years, there'll be more water going into Quartz than the district could dispose of by land. So there will need to be an NPDES permit so that you can dispose of that water on those 5 out of 10 years, right? And in fact, that study, one of the few studies that I've read that started back then, and I look at it today, was accurate. So in fact, TUD did have to release water out of Quartz more often than you would think. So, so that's that. So those are years when we have more water than we have to dispose of. The years where and Director Boatwright's correct, and it is an awful lot of work on a reclamation district employees when there's not enough water in Quartz to give everybody their full allotment, right? But all of this is stated in each reclamation user's end user agreement, that in years when we have short on water, we will share the burden. We all get a ration of, say, 10 to 15 to 30% of the water, and we'll share that burden of not having enough water. Okay. So in comes Don in 2015 as new operations manager for TUD, which I loved that job. But man, did I have some learning to do about the sewer part of this world. I was only in it a couple of years when Quartz was again going to fill and spill. And this is after we rescinded our NPDES permit, spent millions of dollars on Quartz and make sure we were never going to do this. Here we are again. Now we have atmospheric rivers, one after another after another. Our collective sewer systems are aging and aging and aging. And I'm the new operations manager. I have a brand new general manager who is helping me get through this with Director, then employed David. And I had him help me draft a letter to the State Water Resources Control Board telling them that we are days away from releasing water out of Quartz. And he happily helped me do that. But at the last day, he pointed at me and said, Don, do not ever let this happen to this district again. I do never want you to put this district and me in this position ever again. Well, I take those things serious. I felt like my job was on the line. I will not allow that to happen. So, with that general manager who left, then an interim general who left, then another general manager who left, I have to keep this attitude going through all those different general managers that I am responsible to never put this district to jeopardy again. And I take it serious. Well, there's a lot of ways you can do that. And I remember telling all the staff, we're going to attack this in multiple ways, and addressing our collection system is one way. One of the benefits of going tertiary treatment is you can expand your use of that water, right? Then the thought about bringing on the golf course as a way to dispose of as much as 300 acre feet of water. That's music to my ears as the operations manager. Now I have multiple ways that we can assure that we're never going to release water out of Quartz again. The lesser of the two evils, not enough water versus too much. The not enough water, the State Water Resources Board doesn't care about my problems. It is a problem and a big burden on TUD and the reclamation people that run the reclamation, but it's not nearly as bad as if we have too much water. So now back to just the impacts of when there's not enough water. One of the benefits, primary benefits that we probably don't know is with the water. Currently, the golf course is getting irrigated by water that we sell them from Phoenix Lake, right? We release water out of Phoenix Lake, it goes into Sullivan Creek. They get it down there and they pull it out of Sullivan Creek and apply the water. So we have an agreement that in years when we're short, we can offset water. We can, again, sell them water from Phoenix Lake, the way we always have in years when we're short on water. And we can, again, share the burden of whatever sort of restriction there is on the water uses, whatever that may be. Was that just one of her 4 questions?
Yeah.
Okay, currently, you do not charge the ranchers
We
for
do,
that water.
currently we do not.
When it's, but you will be charging the golf course for the tertiary treated water.
So,
Let me finish.
sure.
Are you going to charge the ranchers for tertiary treated water?
So that's a policy question for the board, the TUD board. Currently, there aren't any plans to charge for the use of that water. There's nothing in the very near future that we're going to do that. The agreement that we have with Tulalip says that the first 10 years of us delivering the tertiary water to the golf course will be free. After that, such time, there will be a charge, but that charge has been undefined because who knows what that water's worth is going to be in 10 years from now or 10 years from then.
Another policy question. Will the golf course have priority on that water over the ranchers? Or will the ranchers, because they've, let's see, for 50 years, they've been taking the water almost, will they have a priority?
I guess that is a policy.
It's a policy
It is a policy
question,
question.
but it really needs to be answered. Have you heard from the ranchers?
They have voiced those concerns. You know, annually we have a reclamation meeting just prior to the reclamation season. In the last few years since we signed this agreement with the Tulalip Golf Course, a few of them have voiced their concern and asked those very questions. And Eric, you usually have to answer this question. Do you mind answering how you would answer that question?
I'll try, but tell me if you guys see it differently. I don't think we have any prioritization or hierarchy on deliveries currently. I don't think that we would with the golf course either, but there is an important distinction here is we actually have a contract with Tulalip. When you look out over our reclamation system, yes, a lot of them have been there a long time, but we don't necessarily have current active agreements. Some of those users have chosen not to renew the agreement. So handshake deals, they work great. Back in the day, they don't work really good in today's day. So I think that one of the things we've been trying to do very gently, because it's sensitive, is to have all of our users renew their agreements, bring them up to term, and then I think everyone is on an even playing field because none of our agreements say first, executed first and right to the water kind of thing. And so we don't try to play favorites, but the reality is the system has, and David knows as well as anyone, it has hydraulic restrictions. So even if we open the pipes wide open, people at the bottom tend to get more water than people farther up the line. And so our operators are constantly trying to play referee and keep people evened out with the water that they believe they're entitled to per the agreement that is quite often expired. So hopefully I answer your question.
Hold on, Duke. Barbara was first, I think.
Yeah, that when we look at it in a timeline with our relationship with the ranchers, where we really worked with them to dispose of this water. We really needed them as a partner and they really came through and they disposed of that water, really overwatering just to help us out. So they have performed an enormous partnership with us. I just wanted to add that land down there will stop a fire. That is so green. That is one of the first places you can actually park for evacuation, your large animals, hands down, to unclog 108. And so when we look at the services that that land has, is enormous now. And I think we need to recognize that. The ranchers certainly recognize the value of that land
Yes.
for that very service on behalf of the whole county. So it's our agreement, I think, with the tribe is they don't pay for what, another decade? So they're not gonna pay right away for that water. So there's a lot of little nuances here. One, our historic relationship and the mutual benefit, fire, and the fact that our agreement with the tribe isn't for them to pay for. Will give us plenty of time to work out any agreements with the front end, with the ranching community.
And can you explain why the golf course will not be paying for the water for a decade?
Well, you know, I'm here holding the bag, or we are here holding the bag. It was an agreement between a previous general manager and whoever the tribe representatives were. So I didn't make that agreement. But I'll tell you, one of the things that the district has not done until recently, and we're only just really beginning to do it, is really analyze the true cost of this reclamation system. It's staggering, the numbers, and Carolyn's doing this for me now. It's staggering how expensive this is starting to tally up now that we're actually starting to keep track of these costs. So there is a significant cost. And yes, we have no choice, I mean, in the matter, but there is a fair amount of cost to this reclamation system.
I think part of the answer for the question and why not charging for the first decade was the infrastructure. There's not currently a pipeline from the reclamation system to the Tulalip Golf Course.
Right.
There's application for grant funding to build that line. But even at the termination point of where TUD stops construction, from that point onto the golf course and, you know, where they're going to irrigate, there's going to be an expense incurred on their side. And I believe that was, you know, the trade-off was first 10 years would not be, you know, charged for in that, and also developing, you know, the relationship and use of the water on the golf course.
Go ahead, Duke, and then we'll come back to you. No, you're first.
Oh,
I think you were anyway.
The infrastructure that you referred to is back when I was Deputy Public Works Director, I was approached by the tribe at that point to expand their storage facility on the golf course. It was a big pond. They were gonna dig it out, raise the levels, and increase the capacity. Is that additional storage, does it in effect enlarge courts in a manner of speaking?
In a manner of speaking, it would, but we didn't include that in our water balance that we submitted to the state. So it isn't considered in the capacity of the reclamation system, but yes, operationally, it would provide some help as far as storage is concerned. And the tribe is working on their plans to prepare the golf course for this water, including a crossing of Sullivan Creek and new pipelines, and then segregating some of the on-site ponds exclusively for recycled water use.
That could actually be a slippery slope. As far as, remember, the TUD is still responsible for the water. I mean, any storage site needs to be maintained in a fashion that by natural weather, it's not going to overflow to receiving waters. Sorry.
I wanted to back up and clarify about your current agreement with Tulalip for irrigation. Water is coming out of Phoenix Lake. And so are they are they irrigating with treated drinking water, or as Director Boatwright said, is that considered raw water?
It's raw water from Phoenix Lake Reservoir.
Hey, John, didn't see you back there. John's got a question.
So, just to kind of clarify a little bit, I'm the board president of the Tuolumne Sanitary District, and we have a similar system to what you guys have. We have a agreement with our ranchers that's like 30 years, 40 years to take our water. And so I think that's where the big problem is here. If your ranchers haven't committed to take the water, you gotta have other sources and places to put it. I think that's one thing that, like he said, a handshake doesn't work anymore. We had a 30-year and we ran out and we did it to like a 30 or 40 more years. So I think that's important. And then had a question on, so is Tulalip downstream of Quartz, or is it something that you could feed off and down?
I don't, Don, you tell me, I don't want to get in the weeds, but yes, it is before Quartz, but it could also receive water from Quartz. So
Gravity or pump?
it would have to be pumped from Quartz. It's gravity from our treatment plant. So it's in between our treatment plant and Quartz.
So it's like, and that's one thing, I don't know if anybody caught that, is, in the summer, we used to be able to dispose of our water between our plant and our reservoir, but because of some stuff that the tribe is putting in the water and back flushing stuff, we're getting a bad pH. So we now have to actually go into our reservoir and dilute it and get the pH up so that now all our is pumped on the fields. So if you can dispose of it before it gets to the reservoir, that's always a good thing. And then what we do in ours is our guy has rights to Turnback Creek, so he fills it up, and that also helps us with our quality of our water during by a certain time of the year. We know how much, and he brings it in with fresh water, so that makes it water that he sprays out.
Yeah,
But I think the big elephant in the room is that two things is, one is the ranchers haven't committed to the water. And if they don't, you don't have a place to put it. They could just say, no, we don't want it, and then everybody's in trouble. Secondly, the biggest elephant in the room is why we have two treatment plants instead of one. But that's ship with sail. That ship with sail.
So I see a hanging Chad. And I don't like those either. So I don't, chicken ranches here, and they're one of our reclamation users. I don't know if there's actually, sometimes Jamestown has been a reclamation user, right? You had a little bit of land we irrigate. So the hanging Chad it seems like there's something about the existing reclamation users in there. And I just have to tell you that Barbara said it, they have been even though they were handshake deals, they're a little more than a handshake deal now, but they've been great partners. They have suffered the years when we didn't have enough water, and they have been studs for us when we asked them to take more than they needed to, earlier than they should have. They've been great. The fact of the matter is, the infrastructure is aging, just like our collection system is aging. It's prone to failure. A lot of the reclamations, the ranchers are ill-equipped, especially today, because they're 50 years older than they were then, to fix the infrastructure, to make it usable. And so that burden has shifted to TUD. We have to get rid of this water. So it's just a recognition, one, they've been great partners for TUD for 50 years, but our system collectively is suffering and needs to be replaced, right? And that comes at a cost, and maintained and used. So this one, the hanging Chad, they're great. They're great.
Duke.
Both TUD and Jamestown Sanitary District share many things. And we have a great partnership agreement now where we can get assistance when we need it because we are a smaller district. But we also share to a certain degree somewhat of a burden in that the local planning agency is not communicating very well with us, both of us. And we are currently working to improve that communication through LAFCO and through other agencies and committees that we're both involved with. And I think all of this discussion that we're having would be a news flash to our local planning department. And that is a huge problem, because they're out there doing all sorts of plans, major changes to general plans, housing elements, and they don't have a clue. They've never bothered to ask us. They don't communicate with us, even on development projects. And therein lies a huge common problem that we share. And I think that the dynamics that exist between the CAO's office and the planning is different. That's all I'm gonna say, is that it's different. And there is a need currently to improve that communication. She's definitely not her head.
Barbara.
That is something, and I apologize, but under partnership opportunities, I figured it could slip under that heading at this point.
Go ahead, Mark.
You bring up the elephant in the living room for sure. I don't mean to be too critical on the county side, but when we look at what state direction and the carrots and the sticks that the state is putting out there in terms of grant money and where it is, it's in urban watershed improvements. So in our attempt to outreach to the county and say, hey, we all share Sullivan Creek, we all share Woods Creek, we all share Curtis Creek, Mormon Creek, you name it, we all share it. Our I&I is affected by the way you clean your culverts. Let's talk. And I share the sentiment. It has been very difficult to coordinate. And yet we have an out because we can raise rates, but we need to work together to preempt some of the costs that we receive because of not stepping up. I'll just say it, the county not stepping up to their watershed responsibilities. And the more we urbanize and the more the general plan, which to me looks like a sieve, allows people to do certain things within our water responsibilities, it makes it very difficult on us to treat the water that's now contaminated because people are, doing their thing. And so it is a larger discussion for sure that really involves planning. Now, I know they have a tax problem. And so they're motivated to put things wherever, to cover their expenses. But we have a burden of a cost because of some of those land use decisions.
Responsibility, yeah.
I wanted to piggyback on Director Balin's statement about the carrots and sticks provided by the state. And I'm sure that Director Ringen can speak to this, but JSD is currently in an application process for grant funding to upgrade our plant to tertiary treatment. However, the state is in the process of reorganizing watershed management agencies, and they are looking at focusing on urban areas. And the Integrated Regional Water Management Agency, of which several of us are a member, is basically unsure of how to operate at this time because the state is changing the organizational structure. And we have been told by other water agencies in a 3-county area that if you do not have cease and desist letters from the state, your chances of getting grant funding are nil. And so we are looking at a situation where the state is changing the playing field, and we're not sure how to move forward.
And we didn't just think of the moratorium. We looked at the calculations and the impact on our plant, and to be safe, you just cannot use 100% of your capacity. You've got to have a marker. Is it 80? Is it 85%? Whatever you choose for the safety of your infrastructure. And that's exactly what we looked at. And that is where Jamestown is. We didn't imagine the moratorium. We looked at the numbers and said, we just cannot, we can't go to 100% capacity. At the same time, we're getting this huge pressure that there is this dire need for housing in Tuolumne County. And here we are in the area that some of those in power think is the only area open for development. I disagree. I think that there are other parts of our county, especially areas that already have the infrastructure. It's got the roads, has the fire safety, it has water, sewer. But they seem to be looking at Jamestown, and Jamestown has a tremendous amount of Williamson Act land. That would be major changes. So we didn't imagine the moratorium. We looked at the numbers and said, this is where we are. We're going to move ahead and try to get money to realize our future dreams. But that's where we are right now.
If I may, I'd like to revisit what Rebecca was bringing up and kind of ask or suggest maybe a co-authoring of a grant application. It would seem to me that upgrading JSDs to full tertiary treatment is a higher priority before the pipeline, because if we build a pipeline, unless we can come up with a certain point where it's strictly fed from the regional plant, it becomes hard to provide water to the golf course, which is intricate to making sure that the water balance at Quartz Reservoir. If we could co-author a grant between TUD and JSD and pitch our case that, hey, we need this upgrade so that we can utilize this public contact area of tertiary treated only water, so that we make sure that Quartz Reservoir never discharges to receiving waters again. Could be an approach to moving forward, but I'm not sure in grant writing or applying is not my foray. So all I can do is push the idea out there and, you know.
It's an interesting concept, you know, by if both, would we constitute an urban area, which gets us under the wire with the state for consideration? I don't know. That's more into the grant writing world, which I don't even pretend to understand at this point. But I think that the more people that you have that are engaged in these grants, they look from the state perspective. They like to see cooperative efforts. And even if it just involves a letter of support, that would also be helpful in our efforts to go find these grants. And I want to state something. There are needs and there are wants. Our immediate need is to get to tertiary. Now, having said that, the want is this capacity issue. Now, when we're developing the tertiary, we're certainly going to be making sure that that tertiary improvement would allow for that capacity. But you got to keep in mind that the capacity issue is bigger than just the tertiary part of it. So we might solve a small portion of the issue, and if we were to get the tertiary grant, but it wouldn't solve all the issues dealing with this capacity issue. And again, the capacity issue is a problem created by insufficient planning, in my opinion. You know, an emergency on your part doesn't constitute an issue on our part, but we all want housing. I mean, we realize the need, but they need to follow the prescriptions laid out in CEQA, California Environmental Quality Act, and contact us. We've had this discussion. We know they're not doing it, and it's creating this problem.
And LAFCO has a charge to see that development happens in a responsible way. Well, you've all seen the grand jury report. So what can I say? You know, I don't feel that LAFCO is following the protocol.
Director Ian had a comment.
Okay, you folks are, you're right on the crux of the problem, right there. This county has forever, I've been up here for my whole life, basically. My folks started bringing this up when I was about that tall, and so I've watched development. 60 years I've been in the construction industry, so I understand it. The planning up here for development has been abysmal. That's the best way to put it. That's what TUD's been fighting with for ever since we were formed, is all of these treatment plants that developers put in that were put in on the cheap now are failing. And so what was the county's method of correcting it? Well, let's put together a special water district, and we'll put it all on them and let them figure it out. So getting back to the LAFCO situation, thank God there's a good chairman now in charge of it, and he's moving the county out of being in the position of administrating the LAFCO. At least I believe that's the way it's going. So I think you're going to see things be a lot different. But we're back to the same old thing. Everybody's got to work together. That's why this is so good today, that we're finally airing all of this and finally looking at each other. And we're starting to find out, well, wow, it's not either one of our groups that is an issue. It's everything around, because nobody's working together. So I'm the chairman of the JPA for the Tuolumne Stanislaus Integrated Regional Water Management Plan Group, and I have been for a number of years. Thanks to our illustrious governor and legislature and their spending practices, our state is broke. So all the years that the State Water Board worked to put together all the RWMs around the state, with the state being broke, now the State Water Board is trying to get rid of the IRWMs, and the IRWMs, like our T-Stan Irwin, has brought over $30 million of grant monies into this area in the past number of years. This is money that our ratepayers and our constituents never could have afforded for the projects, and they were very important projects that were done. So as of Monday, I had a conference call with our administrator and our facilitator for the T-Stan Irwin. And I'm putting my foot down. We need to reimagine ourselves. We need to institute what we're doing because the grant monies are going away. Let's just get real. Whatever happens even this November with this election coming up, I think grant monies are going to be few and far between. So we're going to have to really work at this, and we're going to have to work together. So at the T-Stan Irwin meetings, the county never shows up. Why is that? I mean, there's a lot of other entities that don't really be part of the group. That's what it's going to take. All of us working together, all of us trying to find these solutions. So I guess the bottom line here is that I think that with the way what you said about the grand jury report, you were just so correct. I mean, it is damning. But I think there's going to be nothing but good that's going to come out of this. And but all of us now need to wake up and start working together and make these things happen. I don't know whether any of you have ever heard of the group that's called YSS. Have any of you heard of that? Well, they're another organization right here in Tuolumne County. It's loggers, it's environmentalists, it's the county, it's a whole bunch of people. They have brought millions and millions of dollars in grant money into this area to do fire hardening out in the forest, and they're working with the Forest Service. That's the sort of organization, that's the sort of thing that we all need to start doing, is working together in that manner. So I guess I'll shut up and so on, but I just think that that's the bottom line. We need to start pulling together and making it happen.
Duke?
I'd like to comment on a subject that is really near and dear to my heart, and it's called the Regional Sewer Advisory Committee. This is a group that was organized. It was a condition of the original grant that paid for the portion of the system. And it included Twinehart, TUD, Tuolumne Regional, Jamestown, City of Sonora was a party to it at one time. The purpose was to communicate. And I've been attending these meetings for next to 30 years, and some of them were donuts and coffee. I have to admit, they didn't seem to be real important. Other ones were extremely important. And I believe that the misinformation that was out there, had we continued these regional sewer advisory meetings during COVID, we could have done Zoom or whatever. There was no excuse. The communication gadgets are there. I wouldn't have gotten a call saying, why is Jamestown having a moratorium? Why aren't you improving capacity? What are you doing? But we could have aired all of these things. I see Twinehart, TUD, and Jamestown as partners, and we really need to communicate. I know Twinehart's at the top, Jamestown's at the bottom, but we all, what we do has an impact on TUD. What Twinehart does has an impact on the system. And I would like to see those meetings, even if it was just twice a year. I'd like to see it happen.
It all winds up in courts, doesn't it?
What?
It all, Twinehart, TUD and JSD, it all winds up in courts, huh?
Yeah.
Talking about, yeah.
Yes.
Duke, yeah.
Eric and I, this dates me back to when I was Deputy Public Works Director. We created a meeting once a year in the early part of the year to share their projects, our projects as Snohomish County Public Works. We would bring in PG&E, all the other utility companies, and we bring them all in here to this room. And we would meet and talk about our various construction projects, not only for the current year, but we'd also talk about projects that were on the horizon so that we knew how our infrastructure would be impacted. We had Caltrans in there, we had all of them. And I brought the donuts. So
always.
But the importance is that those meetings occurred. Now, I don't even know if they're still happening, but every year that I was there, we had them. You and I worked together on them.
We do still have them, and to Judy's point, we had them on Zoom, I think, last time. So we transitioned to a virtual environment.
Yes, but boy, they haven't happened on a regular basis. And right now is a critical time. TUD is facing some challenges. JSD is facing some challenges. And boy, we better be talking. There are other groups. There's special districts. That encompasses a much larger area, different counties, Twinehart, Jamestown, TUD. We are partners. We are unique. We don't need to be discussing PG&E's problems or anyone else's problems. We have our own.
Barbara?
Yeah, yeah, I really appreciate this discussion, and I just talking as one director, I think it was very responsible of you to have a moratorium. That was a response that I would totally support that. I think the discussion of us as partners and ongoing, and that's where we're comfortable, that's what we have been doing, makes more sense than this director suddenly looking at a document that says that they want to recommend a study on merging. Mergers, an incredibly expensive thing. Nobody talked to us about it. Are we stronger as partners? When I look at the original mission of LAFCO, it was, like you said, to oversee the orderly development of land, proper land use, control sprawl, and protect ag land. You guys have a lot of ag land going on there. And I think if we can continue our partnership rather than suddenly switch and go, oh, should we merge? What is that going to accomplish? And I think we want local control of our water, and we want wherever we are. It's really clear. I mean, local control of how this stays on in our county is really important. And so I support what you're saying. I like what Director Boatwright said is, can we help you? Can we support you for the right reasons moving towards tertiary? Not for pressure growth reasons, like I heard, you know, that this sort of reactionary thing. We have an amazing opportunity to partner with Chicken Ranch as well, because they share similar, you know, situations, and they're huge. And so that makes more sense than a merger. And I don't know where that idea of a merger came from. I'm kind of curious about it. You're shaking your head like you don't either. But I think if we have a counter movement, which is we would like to pursue how we support each other, then that makes more sense to me.
I'd like to
Absolutely.
know where that merger thing came from too. I mean, where did it come from?
In discussions with the state about grant funding. I had a conversation and we were basically told that the state is looking to merge to water districts. That is one of their goals, and the state is more likely to give money for emerging districts. That's what we were told by a finance person when we were talking about grants. I'd also like to point out, we are all aware that grant funding is drying up. But we're not really discussing what's gonna happen if JSD does not get money for our tertiary upgrade. Because we are not financially in a position to take on any funding funds. So if we do not get this grant funding, we may not be able to do this tertiary upgrade. And what, through no fault of our own, we are trying. We have every intention to, we want to. What if we can't? What happens?
That's a pretty big elephant. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Regarding that elephant, I would like to piggyback on what Director Ringen said, because I think we should use the Yosemite Stanislaus Solutions Group as a model. They had people who were diametrically opposed, who were enemies, stated enemies in public. And after years of meetings, some of those people have become friends, and they are on the opposite side of the political spectrum. They have developed a national reputation that for collaboration, and I think that's what has helped bring in some of their excellent grant funding. And so I'm glad you brought that up, because I wanted to point out that the estimate for our tertiary upgrade is $16 million. And what do we do in a collaborative way if we are not able to get funding for that $16 million project?
That project should be on the T-Stand Irwin in
It
our
is.
program.
It is. I don't know if you remember, Ron, but Allison, I'm sorry, I'm starting to use first names. That's probably, sorry. But Allison made the presentation to the earwim. It was a year ago, March, I believe.
I remember.
And so we're in the plan, our $16 million. And in fact, you asked the question that day, what happens if you don't get this grant
Right.
funding? And our response was, we don't know.
Well,
So
see,
we're
that's-
looking at any other source of funding, any other collaborative project. I was sitting here thinking, as you were talking about the ranchers, is there a way that we could send our water in some other way than to Quartz? Could it go to the ranchers directly?
Wintertime storage becomes the issue,
Yeah.
so. I didn't realize that, the expansion for the, tertiary treatment down there was so high. Is that based in a full expansion of nutrient removal?
They have nutrient removal right now, so there is nitrogen removal in for the effluent. It does include some enhancements that weren't addressed in the first expansion project to some of the facilities at Woods Creek and at Quartz Reserve, JSD's Quartz site. So we could look at whittling down that cost, but we wanted to start with something that was conservative, knowing that, you know, that funding is so tight right now. We wanted to be not in a situation where we don't have enough money, especially looking at the timeframes involved to get funding. You know, we have to factor in inflation and increases in construction costs.
Just one quick follow-up. Do you know what constituents or how much? What level are the constituents at? And where are you trying to get them down to?
The issue is more compliance with disinfected tertiary standards. So it's the filtration and the redundancy requirements.
Thank you.
Go ahead. Jacobs.
So the 16 million to upgrade to tertiary, is any part of that to deal with the capacity issue, or is that strictly tertiary? issue?
No.
It's strictly focused on tertiary and producing disinfected tertiary water. One of the challenges that we've had that's taken a while to address with our environmental documents is the capacity question. And we did have correspondence with the county on what developments they saw in the area. We got numbers on that. We put that together. But working through the environmental, anytime you put any increase in capacity, it's just this red flag that adds other environmental issues that need to be addressed. And so we really ended up focusing on tertiary, complying with the terms of the TUD JSD agreement.
So, this all sounds very bleak. Are there any alternatives that anyone can think of? We've racked our brains. We've used consultants. We've done everything we can. And we have not come up with alternatives to dispose of Jamestown's water. Is there an alternative?
Yes, there are alternatives. None of them are free or cheap or inexpensive. There are alternatives. I know Duke has, and I want to give the floor to the board, and I can go later. So yes, there are alternatives, and our staff can work through the details of those alternatives and bring them to our boards respectively at a later date, but none of them are cheap or inexpensive to me.
But they don't exceed 17 million.
I would be speculating.
Yeah.
For our part, I want everyone to know, public to know, that we are in the midst of a rate study and bringing that into closer compliance with what our needs are. But I think TUD is uniquely positioned and has a vivid memory. If you try to put the entire burden of these type of improvements on the development community, and then the development stops, that's not a good solution. You've got to spread it out amongst all the ratepayers. And unfortunately, there is no single sugar daddy out there that's gonna come in and give us our system that we need. That's just not realistic at all. However, we will be rebalancing those rates to try to bring us into better financial situation.
Duke, I don't think that the ratepayers should put any part of development whatsoever. It is not for a current ratepayer to be paying for developers' new development. They're the ones making the money. They should step up to
I
the
was
plate.
referring primarily to tertiary. Tertiary, everybody that's a need for the entire system.
Right.
What you want is development to be revenue neutral. And that's also, but you can't just say, hey, you're gonna pay for the whole upgrade. There will have to be some give and take there. And unfortunately, I don't think the county ever bothered to learn about that.
Director Balin's got a comment too.
I just want to get back to the grant thing because being out in the mountain county circles and, the larger regional circles and just having access to some opportunities out there is, and getting back to Rebecca's statement and Jill also, the money, the carrots and the sticks in the state are shifting, but the money is there, the grants are there. There's a new bond, we formally or informally call them water bonds, but they're no longer. They're I was just looking at the latest one. I just sent it to Don so that he can pass it around, but it's the safe drinking water, Fire Prevention, Drought Preparedness and Clean Air Bond Act of 2024. And that has money from anything from, of course, the safe drinking water and flood control, wildfire, that's the YSS that we've got, extreme heat mitigation, that's new $450 million, 1.2 billion for protecting biodiversity, goes back to, Newsom's, executive order on nature-based solutions, which land application of water certainly is a nature-based solution, raising nature. Ron Boyd Sneed is all about that. We've got, let's see, 300 million for climate resilient farms, ranches, and working lands. Working landscapes are what you guys have down there. They're performing ecological services. That's the way we use them. So I think that there's money out there, and it might behoove all of us to take a look at some of this and see where we can look at tertiary, because that would be the responsible response to water treatment and within a watershed. So we're not just schlepping it over to Nevada to deal with. So any rate, that maybe give us some ideas, because I believe the money, parts of it, yes, you're drawing up, but parts of it is reshuffling into larger pots. Yeah.
Go ahead, Rebecca.
So Barbara, is that bond act of 2024, will that be on the upcoming election? Or has that already been approved?
I do not know.
It's on the
I don't
November.
know the
It must be
ballot.
November.
It's on the November ballot.
Okay. It is November.
Thank you.
November. ballot.
But it may, right, but it's all about positioning for us, you know, and the heads up so that we can retool and I would think bring the tribes in as a partner, et cetera. Because we're not seeing the leadership, we're seeing the leadership here, we're not seeing it anywhere else.
Jennifer, sir.
Comment
John.
in the back.
So as far as a bond, do we know what the stipulations of a bond versus a grant is? Because bonds from banking experience are usually, there's stipulations with those.
I didn't hear that.
Bonds versus grants, in banking, a bond is usually if you pull it out, there's a penalty. So do we know anything about the stipulations of this 2024 bond that is gonna be on the ballot? As opposed to a grant?
Okay, go ahead.
So Jen, I think the issue is that the voters will have to approve a bond act, which means then that the state will issue bonds that people will buy. And that money then goes into a pot and that is divvied out into grants. Am I correct? Basically?
For example, fiscal managers like Sierra Nevada Conservancy, and they take that bond money and there's certain state places where then you apply as a grant.
There's a question
But I think with
in the back.
Oh, sorry.
Where are we in?
Yeah.
Jump in, I didn't know where we were.
Go ahead, Stephanie.
Are we in partnership yet?
Yeah, we're all over the place. Good to see you.
Okay, I'm Stephanie Seuss, I'm the Community and Resources Development Director from Chicken Ranch in Triad. So, thought I'd just jump in. So the tribe, we just finished.
Yes.
I'm pretty loud. Oh, well, thank you. We just finished our own MBR, wastewater treatment plant. And it's tertiary and we have a maximum capacity of about 300,000 gallons per day. And we have about 120 acre feet of storage. We have 100% reclaimed water. We can go to UV. We don't yet because it goes into a pond like quartz. And there's no point of treating UV water unless we pull it out of quartz or our own quartz reservoir. As a federally recognized tribe, we can be a partner, right? If you have matching grants and if you need state funds, not that we will give you funds, but I think, and not speaking on behalf of tribal council, but I've talked to Nick, I've talked to Don, but I think we've signed letters of support. We've signed MOUs to help other entities with grant applications. We have businesses that are downtown Jamestown when they're open, that we have a lot of interest in supporting, obviously, JSD. So if there's an opportunity for us to help, I want to make sure we're here. That has not always been the case for a variety of reasons, but I think there's certainly support. I want you to know that. If there was a way that we could get whatever you're handling down to us and across the street, we're here. That would take some more communication, but the point is, I don't want you also to feel like the tribe is not part of the community, right? We are here. The other thing I want to talk about is this relationship with the ranchers. We've been a long-term user of reclaimed water. It is Williamson Act. We have a main line that goes through in the lower zone through tribal property, goes on to Rosasco and Gardella. I think I've been to a lot of these reclamation luncheons. I don't know if that conversation has ever truly come up about, hey, there may be water going to someone else. I don't know also if I would characterize age as a factor of now you're too old to get out and work your land. I get that. But I think from a general plan standpoint, and I won't get into the county, but is that the long term? I think from a planning standpoint, that maybe looking at those lands just from a generational standpoint or from new people, maybe that is the area for ranch lands. Maybe that is a purpose for water. The tribe has this philosophy of 7 generations, and you know, we're looking at the use of the tribal water as ensuring that those lands will be, whole nother story, but we had to do some water assessments. And they wanted to make sure that they would always have water for those lands for ag production. And so taking some water out from those ranchers, I would give them the opportunity to sign contracts, I guess is my point. Not just assume handshake deals are over because you're old and you're not going to do your, fix your fields, right? Some people might want that water. Some people might want the opportunity to keep the water. So I would keep that in the back of your head. Oh, that was my hanging Chad comment. Yeah, right. The other thing I wanted to say, just in general, the tribe has been embarking on this project called the Jamestown Happiness Project with the community of Jamestown. And I don't know if anyone's heard about this, but we've been meeting with the community, and it started, we're working under a transformative climate, I don't even know, it's a grant, but transformative communities challenge grant, I don't know. But we've been meeting, and it started after the county was looking at putting the pallet houses at the Jamestown mine site. And so we reached out, and because we wanted to hear what the community wanted. And things kept coming up like, no more pallet houses in Jamestown. We're not the dumping ground for everything that the county wants to do with us. But what came up lately is, what's a special district, right? So we have reached out to Pete Campa, the guru of special districts, but we're going to have that conversation. And I just wanted to say that to JSD, as long as you guys are here, and thinking further, but I think this may come up in more conversations. And I know John's sitting right here about, God, no, don't bring up special districts and combining things and things like that. But that going further, I don't know if there's an opportunity to expand services or thoughts in the future with JSD in Jamestown. Because I know there's the promotion club, and I'm sorry to get off base, but I don't get this opportunity with everyone in the same room. But I'm feeling like this new energy down there with the community itself, looking to get involved and really kind of put the county back on their heels. Kind of a grassroots thing growing, because they are looking at their services. They too feel like a moratorium is fine, because they want to catch their breath. They want to make sure they're prepared, whether it's fire services, the tribe is building a fire station for the casino, but for the community, because when we went and asked to partner, the county was really not there. So we partnered with the city of Sonora. Again, Jamestown feeling they're not being heard, they're not being considered. The tribe is trying to support them, to engage more, right? So whatever we can do perhaps to support JSD, we work well with TUD. Who knew? But we do. Thank you, Dawn and the board. But I think there's really some really positive opportunities. And if it's pipe in the ground, if it's a couple more lift stations, I don't know. I don't know. But if there's an opportunity to re-operate how we run our reservoir, right? If we can handle more of the lower zone, I don't know either. But we're here, we're in the room, whatever we can do to help. I just wanted to make sure that was presented. So you weren't here saying, well, I don't know, can the tribe help? I don't know. But yes, I think we can help.
Thank you, Stephanie. Thank you, Stephanie.
I just want to add something here real quick too. We were talking about that, the bond act that's coming up in November. Usually, and Carolyn, you might be able to correct me if I'm wrong here, but when you got a bond act, there's a payback piece to that. It's not grants, unless there is a grant piece that's built into this particular act. But I do know that just what somebody was saying here, when they sell those bonds, those people that buy those bonds, they expect to get their money back with interest. So so there is a payback piece on those, and it's usually very favorable to the utility. I know that we have one with our wastewater treatment plant. Was very favorable terms, and even my own experience with my own little private utility, we had one many years ago, and yes, we did have to pay that back, and we did. So just didn't want anybody to be fooled into thinking that that is strictly grant money, because it will not be if it's bonds.
It's both. It's both.
Is it both? Okay.
Because it gets down to when it gets down to the local level, essentially we're taking other people's money that
Investor money.
yeah, investor money, which is usually from the rich coastal communities and stuff. But we are able to, like, a lot of the work that YSS does, that is grant money that has been approved, voter approved in these initiatives that can come to our counties as disadvantaged communities, et cetera, that don't even have a match sometimes. And so it's just not an all or nothing. Yes, it comes in the form of a bond. But then by the time it works its way into the Department of Natural Resources and other places, then it comes as a grant, like youth access to their green spaces grants. That's a grant, but it was from Prop 64 bond money.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Now somebody else had a comment here. Was it Glenn? And then I think somebody else did too. So go ahead, Glenn. John, was it you? Did you have a comment?
No, I was pointing out Stephanie.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie, for your comments are very much appreciated, and your support is very much appreciated. In your discussion, I wasn't clear. I just want to clarify something. It seemed like you were floating the idea of a community services district for Jamestown. Did I hear that?
That's what's coming up in some of our discussions.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so we're at the 2 hour mark, and this has been fabulous conversation. I really enjoy all and making all kinds of notes, a lot of mental notes, and we elevated the conversation to a really high level, which is where it really kind of belongs. In my own mind, I wanted to get into the weeds a little bit more, and we didn't cover everything, and that's fine. We don't need to. I don't know that I necessarily want to go back down in the weeds because it got elevated. So, it's where policymakers and decision makers need to be. So in the agenda, one of the things was partnerships and opportunities. And before I threw out the chicken rancheria as one of those potential partners, I contacted Stephanie and she said, absolutely, we're always considered to be partners, but give me some idea how we can help. So I threw out some lame ideas. I'm sure they're lame, but my point of saying all that, and this is kind of going back to you, Judy, what do we do if these grants don't come? What then? And we are surrounded at every level with a bunch of smart people right here in this room and virtually. There's a lot of smart people here, and we can if we have a want to, and we really want to get something accomplished, we can get it accomplished. I see us doing it here at this district on a daily basis. This district, TUD, has a superior grant program. We've received millions and millions of dollars over the last 20 years. I don't know how many, multiple millions of dollars over different types of grants. So we too actively go after and acquire grants to offset our ratepayers' dollars, because like Director Ringen says on a regular basis, we're at a disadvantaged community. We're a disadvantaged districts, right? We don't have a lot of rate revenue, not a lot. So we depend on grants to cover a lot of things. But this district also has a good reputation. Boy, how good. What I'm about to say doesn't sound right, but it's kind of, we have a track record. I won't say a good reputation. We have a track record of keeping up with rates, right? The way I understand it, our districts are required by law to bring in enough revenue to run your districts appropriately. We are required to do those things. So unfortunately, every 5 years or so, this district has had to raise its rates to meet the deficit gaps that we can't find in grants. So it's the answer, right? Dawn's answer, not TUD's answer. What do we do if the grants don't come in? Well, we have to find a way to accomplish the same goal because we owe it to our ratepayers, both of our ratepayers to do that. So.
Okay.
Yes.
Andy.
Yeah, good afternoon, everybody, well, it's almost afternoon, I guess.
It is.
Yeah, it is actually afternoon, 8 minutes past. So I'm Andy Penasco, General Counsel. My office has been working with the district for many years. This is a pretty remarkable juncture in the road. Since my time here, I've never been participating in a joint session of these two districts that do have a strong partnership, and that partnership being demonstrated objectively with the Quartz Reservoir. My view of this agreement has always been a planning document as to planning future, as to water balancing for TUD as an element of how you're looking at your future growth. And now that we're at this juncture where you're in the process of figuring out what we want to expand our use of the water, expand that use to a tertiary application so that you can utilize it in a more human contact form. And here we are at JSD, utilizing that as one of our primary sources of the discharge. This is to me the best outcome, because the worst outcome, in my opinion, would be a position where we're taking adversarial positions premised on this agreement. And so moving into this partnership element, that's the foundation as to what I'm seeing. I see new partners that have popped up, being the Chicken Ranch Casino folks, the Tuolumne Sanitary District folks that are coming in to this region as to how do we utilize and how do we get rid of and how do we balance our water issue with the wastewater. So from my standpoint, I see very positive outcome walking out of this room if we were to walk out right now because of this joint conversation, hearing the policy decisions coming from your board knowing the policy decisions of the board that I work with, having very much aligned outcomes, just some challenges and the appreciation that you all are recognizing those challenges and being reasonable in the fact of working through those challenges. So just like that's the position where I'm coming from. I just wanted to color that in that conversation as it goes forward in this partnership element.
Thank you. Thank you, Andy. Well, Barbara?
So do we have any on currently policy that like a memorandum of understanding or memorandum of an agreement, which really these are benign agreements, but they all say we agree to work together towards common benefit, common solutions. It includes the tribes. I mean, it could be even a JPA, that would be lovely, where we have a joint powers of authority, maybe that's too much, and share the responsibility of our water. But that we agree to some tenets or principles of values. You know, we believe our ag land is important. We believe that disposal of water is like you said, as respected as our treated water, you know, and that we agree to work together to find the solutions. Just so we're not blindsided by somebody coming in and saying, oh, we think that you guys should merge, but we see that this is, and I agree, because we're getting pressure to consolidate. So it's very similar, you know, what the state wants us to do. But in this area with the diverse geography, et cetera, there's not an economy of scale to pull it off. As with, you know, 200 people per mile of pipe, we have maybe 2 people per mile. So but there are variances that have been justified, but I just want us to be prepared. And memorandums, these are instruments where we all agree and we have these common values and common issues that we agree to work together to solve them, rather than somebody else making the decision. This is how you will solve them and the way you'll solve them. So that may be something we may want to consider as well. And that would make sure that the tribes are cooperators.
Excellent.
If I could comment on one element. So we brought up the moratorium earlier. And again, this is for the people online that may be watching the recording. I'm Andy Panasco, General Counsel, Jamestown Sanitary District. The moratorium, the resolution that was adopted and the policy decision that was made by this board was really a messaging element to the community to, as we say, take a step back, to get our house in order, to understand our obligations to the TUD, our obligations to the community to provide that service, and also a message to any private development that may have been anticipating coming into the community so that they know that they're not going to invest any significant or material funds pursuing something that may be kind of a dead letter. These MOAs or these memorandum of agreements or memorandum of understandings or that as well. To me, in the legal world, I see those as messaging tools to message to whomever we're intending to message to. And here we'd be looking at the county, we'd be looking at LAFCO. So those sorts of things that's how I view them. That's how I would counsel my board, and at a policy level, and then my board would be able to take that advice and then work in collaboration with the partners that they're looking to message with and determine what that message is, and then work with whoever legal counsel that is independently with each party to provide that message. Because I do agree they're benign in nature, but in that we just are kind of agreeing to agree. But it's really kind of what I would consider a press release or something of that nature in the private context. So that's how we would view that.
Director Jacobs?
Yes, I wonder if we could hear from our general counsel, if he could maybe weigh in on what we've been discussing about MOUs and MOAs.
Still there, Jesse?
I am, yes. You know, it just depends on what the board or what the boards, plural, are interested in pursuing. I mean, if the idea is something broad, as Director Balin has outlined, some tenets of agreement, something that both boards would agree to pursue. Perhaps it's money, perhaps it's projects, perhaps it's assistance to each other, to the other district. I think that would be more appropriate for an MOU rather than like a press release or something like that. I think that press release is just a commitment to the group that we agree to operate on certain principles. But if we're looking for something tangible, I think an MOU would be more appropriate. Thank you.
Director Ringen.
I think one of the things we probably need to do is really, before we make any major steps forward, is to see where this JPA, not JPA, the LAFCO situation and the answer to the grand jury, how that's all gonna shake out, because the one entity that I believe was behind the whole issue of this consolidation and so on was the county, and or they. We don't have them here, yeah. So I think that's a major cog in this thing. We need to get that rectified first. LAFCO needs to get back on its feet and what it's supposed to be doing, which I'm sure is going to occur now. But that will solve a lot of our problems right there, I think.
Director Balin?
Real quick, I think that that's good. That's a really good point. But in terms of us taking the initiative in this room to strengthen our relationships and make it really clear as a messaging that we intend to address even the pressure from the state for merging and preempt some of that pressure. We're doing just fine communicating. Thank you very much. You know, we don't need you to come in and tell us what to do, but to be prepared and not be caught flat-footed, I think is really important. And to have our partnerships like with our tribes in the room with us so that we all agree in this benign instrument that says we agree to work together to solve our problems first. And I don't really want to wait for the other entities to get straightened out first. I don't have a lot of confidence in that. I mean, I agree it does have to happen, but I think we can do the things in parallel.
I agree, and I think that our effort it can influence LAFCO, it can influence the county or inform them. They need to know what we're doing. So I'd say the sooner the better.
Yep, good point.
Is there a timeline on this tertiary issue for JSD?
I know.
Yesterday.
Yeah, well, it's whatever. Bring them all in. I don't care.
Hey, Don, maybe you can. That brings up something that I wanted to get back to because it's related to what Stephanie just asked about. And it was started by Jill when she asked about what happens if the grant money doesn't come through. And then you said there are answers, they're expensive. And Judy said, well, are they 17 million? But at least from my own personal standpoint, I don't think we ever really got down into that, did we?
No, I mean,
So,
because we elevated the conversation.
Yeah, so
And
maybe this is
isn't,
all
you know,
related here.
I'm gonna steal a phrase from one of our retired associate engineers. This isn't the best place to do some engineering, right? He does his best work at his computer, and these sort of conversation will happen between staff and staff. But yes, there are some options. We've had some talented people. We've been faced with some disasters due to storms and other things. We've had to react very fast and come up with great solutions. So yes, there are solutions. I doubt they're $17 million, but there are, at least not upfront capital costs. Lifespan, it might be 30, 40, $50 million. So we just have to analyze those things, but timeframe, we're past due, right? We have a new WDR that requires us to be tertiary treatment. So now I think we both, Jamestown and TD, thankfully have a great relationship with those regulators who regulate us, and they know, they're well aware of the challenge we have with our effluent water quality. They're aware. They said they would also be partners to help us solve this problem. So I don't know if I answered both your questions, but
Okay, I'll take that as an answer for now. All right, who's next?
So just to, I guess, piggyback on that, currently we started this whole meeting with, is everybody in compliance with their WDR? So TUD, you had made the comment that you're in compliance with your WDR at this moment in time. JSD is in compliance with this WDR. So the real context of what you're talking about here is the reuse of that water and to push it down the river from courts. And that's what really this agreement, as I see it, is why I called it a planning document. And sometimes I use, real basic level words and they don't have legal effect, but that's why when you look at this was the TUD was planning because you had on your horizon as a good agency does, which is looking at what does the future look like for development within our jurisdiction. And you're seeing the development of the Chicken Ranch Casino, the development of the golf courses, and then maybe even some other agricultural applications. So the enforcement mechanism in this agreement, I think it's obvious to everyone in the group, but the difficulty of that is that really puts the regional board in a position where what's Jamestown going to do with its effluent, right? In the event that this gets walked into a courthouse in Tuolumne County, and we're looking at, or at the regional water, the regional board, what is the real solution here? And that's where my comment was that why it's remarkable in that the policymakers that are involved in this are talking in a very reasonable manner as to what's a realistic solution. So I guess peeling all that back, is the statement correct that TUD is in compliance with its orders right now? JSD, I know, is in compliance with our orders. And that the question being is that it's the reuse element. So moving that water from courts to a different application would be the point in time where you would technically be out of compliance of your order if you were to try and utilize it in the tertiary manner. Is that correct?
I think so. I'll say that we're currently operating under our old reclamation permit and master reclamation permit. That's why we're still in compliance, because it only prescribes the application of secondary treated water. So your discharge into ports currently in compliance, but over the next 8 months to 12 months, I'm saying kind of loosely, we're going to get coverage under a new statewide general order for recycled water use that will presume that tertiary water is being used for irrigation throughout the entire system. That means above courts and below courts. And at that moment, we technically would not be in compliance. And I don't have I don't have a good clear picture. Allison may better what that will look like with the regional board, but we should work collaboratively, and I think we are, on some mitigations and some strategies, and probably reach out to the regional board too and have some more further discussions. They're aware of this conundrum. I use that word, but I don't know that anyone at the regional board has messaged to us what it looks like on the day in which we're operating under the new recycled water general order. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, for the most part, because I deal with these throughout the mountain communities, these water balance issues. And this is not, I guess, unique in the sense of different, watersheds being the lowest part of the watershed. That's typically where these things come up, and where we usually find success is rooms like this, where you've got, your staff here that has the technical knowledge, and you've got your policymakers here learning about staff's technical knowledge and learning about your partner agencies a little bit better, so that policy on both sides has all of the information so that you can make reasonable, beneficial decisions for all of your ratepayers in the community. So that's, like, again, I will say this is a very good step in my opinion.
Jill had a comment. Go ahead.
Yeah. That's one of the problems that we're having with trying to get our grant money, is we, was mentioned earlier, that unless you're getting fined, you're not gonna get any money. You're just not gonna get the use of that.
Yeah, representative told us that if you are not getting cease and desist rights from the state.
So we are in place. So that does it, that does make it harder for us to get this grant funding that we're trying to get, because we're asking for this money to do this tertiary upgrade, and they're looking to. But why? So we're having to explain to them why we need to do this tertiary upgrade, and that's a difficult conversation. And that's something that we may need your assistance, I mean, maybe, like we were talking about agreement letters, I don't know how we would need to do that, but we need to explain to the state that our lack of the tertiary could then in turn cause lack of compliance for you. So we, in my mind, I feel like we need to work together to get this grant money, because I don't think they're quite understanding the urgency. And until they do, we're not gonna be at the top.
So going on with what she's talking about. If quartz is all tertiary and it overflows, what will be the downside to that?
You're asking me a question that I just don't have an answer to. Director.
I'll get one out there.
I mean, I've got, besides the obvious, but
Okay, the state and it would still be a fine. Okay.
It would be a fine.
There's no doubt about it, 100%, some form, there's gonna be a fine. But completely raw wastewater out of your collection system to receiving waters, ongoing overflow comes a fine. Very big fine. Out of your lift station or mechanical devices or treatment plant, gonna be a pretty good sized fine. If it's treated as wastewater that goes out into the environment, secondary standards, gonna be a fine. Not gonna quite be as big because it's not quite as much pollution. Out of quartz and tertiary treatment, still gonna be a fine. If it's a really big spill, still gonna be a really big fine. But based on the contaminant going into the environment is a component of how the state looks at a fine. But not a shadow of a doubt, overflow quartz reservoir into receiving waters, gonna be a fine.
I'm just wondering if that would be at least a partial sales point on trying to get grant money or something. That they need to go to tertiary in order to alleviate a problem if quartz did overflow.
Quartz reservoir could be qualified if both treatment plants were going into tertiary treatment, high level of standard for nutrient removals. There's no zinc component. The zinc and ammonia were our top two constituents of concern during our last one. An NPADS permit could be acquired. Our last permit that we had, our NPDS permit, when we got into it, 1999, maybe 2000 was when it initiated. We had a consultant gonna help us through this process because we're applying for state and federal permit and all that. We were guided through a major dischargers permit, meaning 1 million gallons per day plus back into receiving waters. If you total up everything that we ever actually discharged legally and in compliance under our permit, we really didn't need 1 million gallon per day permit, because it was a much smaller amount that we actually ended up discharging. So could you apply for a smaller level of discharge at a better treated? Certainly, it can be done, still be expensive. I mean, still opens you up for other liabilities and stuff. Definitely could be done. But Eric, are you sure? Because everybody is being pushed under the same general permitting requirements for reclamation system as far as tertiary?
No, well, Allison, would you mind taking that? I think you actually may know better.
Yeah, so the state, since the water reclamation permit's pretty old, but I'd say in the last 10 years, they've transitioned from issuing individual reclamation permits to trying to permit under a general reclamation order. And so then it would cite Title 22 requirements for you need this level of treatment for this type of discharge. So I think that the system wouldn't be violating that general order until you discharged, your level of treatment didn't match up with your type of discharge. So that would mean when the water is discharged to the golf course, if it doesn't meet tertiary standards. But there's the issue of wanting to plan the system or operate the system to meet your end requirements. You know, if you know that you're gonna discharge to Tulele, then you want to be making your way to that. I think there's also a question of what the state would require as far as flushing the system when you're transitioning from secondary to tertiary. So the sooner that all the wastewater going into the reclamation system meets tertiary standards is the better, because it just means like, okay, you're complying with the most stringent requirements for your discharge. And then as far as the question on if quartz spilled, I think it would lead to concerns from the state regarding why did it spill? It's supposed to be designed for 1 in 100-year rainfall condition. If it wasn't a 1 in 100-year rainfall, why did it spill? There must be something wrong with the design or how it was operated. But I often see the regional board require work plans and reports to assess why the issue happened and how you would prevent it from happening again.
Duke had a comment. I'm sorry.
In partial answer to Ron's little history, the state of California had a big problem out of the conservation prison. Basically, their sewage treatment plant failed. And what they ended up having to do was they got every single water truck in the county, filled them up with sewage, drove them to Quartz Reservoir, tearing up the county roads in the process. And then they eventually got a grant to go tertiary and they fixed the problem. But they were very quick, amazingly quick, to solve the problem, because that water was going right into Tulloch Reservoir and they were drawing that water out right on the bridge on O'Byrne's Ferry Road. So just downstream from where that sewage was gonna go into, state has a different approach when it's their own problem. I don't think we can count on that kind of commitment from the state at this point, but we're certainly give it a try.
Barbara.
Yeah, so speaking as one board member, I'm really interested in supporting you guys with your priority. I see pressure being put on you guys. And I see when we have found grants, you know, we do have resources to find grants, and they've been really incredible. I mean, with no match sometimes, et cetera. And so I feel that because fine, it's that's great. So what are we talking about in terms of how much would it cost? What are we talking about ballpark to look, what money are we looking at for tertiary?
17 million. 17 million.
What do you think?
But you have to, you need to find factor inflation, because like the original, the plant that we're in today, that was estimated to be a $10 million bill. They think it closed at 16 and a half. So with inflation and with
Okay.
costs over time, so if we're estimating 16, 17, we can probably figure 22, 25.
Million?
I just based off the last build, I mean.
So it would be, so then that could be a USDA type. You know, those are deeper pockets. I'm just getting an idea of how because clearly there is a burden here. And I think that because we benefit from what you guys are doing and vice versa, that, I'd like to see if we can help look for money. And maybe go in it as some kind of, partnership. I don't know. I'm just throwing out ideas. Yeah. Help you stay solvent.
So, I just have a couple more things that I might want to just say, but one of those things is, so we already have an executed mutual assistance agreement between the two districts, and we've exercised that agreement. So that's that. Jennifer here several months ago floated when she became aware that you guys were going to do maybe, switch your grant from one thing to the other and do a condition assessment. She floated the idea of maybe entering an MOU with you to help you with going through that assessment, because we have we have done the same thing in the past, and we've learned some things. We can help guide you through that. So just demonstrating the fact that we've always, not always, we've been here to help and assist. We want to assist because as you go, we go, right? As good as you are, we're good. So together we're stronger. So again, that idea of us helping you from the staff level with your assessment is still valid and on the table. So that's that one thing. The other thing, Jill, unless you're in some sort of a trouble, find and you can't get these grants. I'm not going to debate that with you. We're getting grants on a regular basis without necessarily being out of compliance with something. But it seems weird that we have to be out of compliance before we get a grant. It seems like we ought to be more proactive than reactive. So now, that being said, I can help you. Remember, you weren't here, actually, sorry, but in September 21st of 2022, I sent you a letter. Just tell you you're gonna have to be in compliance. So add this to your list of things that you need to justify this grant.
That was the letter dated when we needed to be tertiary.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree on that.
Okay. Got your boat right.
Happy to be sitting between Jill and Barbara with a very large number going back and forth. Which the effort of conservation, spending OPM, other people's money. It would seem to me, pushback on ports being full tertiary treated water with permit is a better course at figuring out where to build a dedicated pipeline in the reclamation system to Tulalip Golf Course for full tertiary compliant water going straight to them. TUD generating tertiary compliant water in the wintertime going to Quartz Reservoir. Jamestown contributing the best secondary effluent as possible to Quartz Reservoir, being only a 10% of flow year round, reduced to 6 months out of the year, would increase that to 20% of the water in Quartz Reservoir having nutrients which supply plants their necessary growth, because you want to kill a plant, kill an office plant, water it with distilled water and nothing else. Grasses need other things besides water to grow, good soil, good air, and nutrients in the form of ammonia and nitrogen and, other things. At a cost of $25 million,
That was an estimate based off of the previous bill. It was estimated at 10 and ended up being 16.5.
Yeah.
So we're estimating 17. What's
Yeah,
actually gonna be.
it just gets to be such a large number, and striving to go to such nutrient removal, which I've always kind of used it as, or thought of it as water that has simple green, or no. Simple green. Anyway, the good, sprayer that's got, pardon? There we go. Yeah, I knew it was green. Simple Greens plant. All right, yeah, no, Miracle Grow in the water. That's why, as you drive up the highway, Nathan Rosasco's fields on both sides, kind of, wow, look at how green and lush this is. Truth be told, if you drive out Highway 49, Jack's fields are just as green, only he doesn't clip the brown, seed pods off the top. So as you're looking through, always kind of looks brown until the cattle all graze it off, and then he's got that, nice green lush to it as well too. It just, like I said, if we're gonna throw some really big money at a problem, I would like to know why all the other, solutions for the same goal being accomplished are, not effective.
Director Rand.
So let me see if I understand you. So you're suggesting to offset, to leave the secondary treatment going to courts and then to the ranch land, and then run a pipe for the tertiary from TUD to the Tulalip golf course.
Upstream.
Yeah. Well, it would be.
Yeah, I mean,
Upstream strictly from the Sonora Regional. Sonora Regional is
Yeah,
gonna
no,
put
no, I
up
get it.
tertiary
I get
treated
it.
year round. The pipes never have to be washed, the simplification and not trying to get into engineering. I wanna know why it wouldn't work that way first before I, and pushback.
Well, I'll
Yeah.
tell you this, that this board member is strictly against, I mean, dead set against TUD ratepayers paying for that pipeline. I'll be damned if they should be paying for that.
Well,
pipeline.
totally other, and I'm not trying to ruffle any feathers, and that's, but what I'm saying is in the event that, if TUD is pushing Jamestown Sanitary to go full tertiary, what is the purpose? The only purpose for pushing to full tertiary is either the state is when there is no more reclaimed water that is not tertiary in the state, or you're using a tertiary treated water for a public contact application area. So you're applying, because restricted access to public contact is where we're at with secondary treated wastewater going on agricultural land. The other thing you have to look at is that agricultural land, discharging to groundwater. So groundwater has to be monitored, and if your, constituents are going up too high there, you're basically applying too much, or too high of secondary standard treated wastewater to that site. One of the things that was brought up when, we studied the groundwater out there is how do we bring the constituents that are in the groundwater down? That was, well, you can add half again the amount of water that's in quarts from your raw water source. But then you're gonna end up with, instead of 1,600 acre feet of water, you got 3,200 acre feet of water. And you've just jumped back to what I always refer to as the, most basic thing, the solution to pollution's dilution. And you just made made it smaller. So it's not as concentrated, not as, fertile water going out there. It's not, going down. Then you need twice as much ground to get rid of that water. Because a drop of one just made the other the same, in the eyes of the state. If you could have 1,600 acre feet of raw water, 1,600 acre feet of, secondary standard water. A drop of this into that just made them both equal in the eyes of the state water board. Anyway, I just want to make sure we're looking at everything before we.
Along those lines, David, was some legislation in California a few years ago that proposed treatment commensurate with use. So it doesn't make sense then that we flush our toilets with the cleanest water in the world. Okay, so that bill did fail, but it brought out the idea of why should we treat it all to this certain standard, like fire flow, for an example. Why should we use treated water only on fires? You know, fire doesn't care. We could be using raw water, ocean water, whatever. But if I follow what you're saying is, and it harks back to the Tuolumne Tribal Chair being here a couple of years ago that said, we have plans for that tertiary water. Okay, if I remember that correctly. So that means, okay, pipe that somebody pays for, maybe it's, I don't know, but that goes right to the tribe because they're gonna be using it for an upgrade of use. Whereas the ranchers, why should we convert everything to tertiary if we're still gonna do land application where it's just the nutrients have some value? Is that kind of what I'm hearing you say? It doesn't all have to be treated to a certain standard.
Well, you know, that's where I'm at as far as, you know, that's the only way to split off. The only way to bring, water to be applied where there's gonna be public contact. Which is not just limited to a golf course. I mean, there's a whole list of other things that it can be applied to. Is to bring it up to tertiary standard. So the proposed 200-acre, which would have the ability to have 600 acre-feet of water used on it. Has to be tertiary treated water because of the public contact. If it was just ag land and pasture, same 600 acre-feet of secondary standard water, as long as it doesn't, you know, pollute groundwater. Is fine. We have acknowledged that we have potential for a problem and need to go to some form of treatment to reduce our nutrient loading based on what we're seeing in the groundwater out there. So there is reason for it, but do we have to be 100%? Could that be, you know, 20% Jamestown water, 80% tertiary treat? Reducing the burden on the groundwater.
So are we all right to keep going for a little bit, however much longer? Glenn, you're good?
Yeah, I'm fine with that, you know, for a short bit. I think we're kind of winding down.
I think we are too, but we are gonna bust through 3 hours. You okay, Barbara? Ron, you're good? Yeah, so we're good. Okay.
I do have one other thing that. Let's see, this is what, about a 5 or 6 year first time joint boards have got together for the next meeting and hopefully before 2027, when it goes into law. The governor just signed a reduction in potable water consumption law. I don't think it goes into effect in it's in law in 27. Sometime thereafter is another 20% by 2020 reduction on potable water. Will be a direct impact on wastewater treatment, collection systems, treatment plants, and all that too.
And that could be a great subject matter for a future joint meeting. And yeah, I also was aware of that legislation. Somehow the coastal counties are getting off, but not sure how it's gonna impact that. That's a great follow-up discussion item.
So what's the proper name? It's escaping our minds. What's the proper name of this?
It's SB, well, Glenn would tell us. I don't know.
So
if it's
the bottom line is,
25.
right, there's some gallon per day per capita reduction of water forecast, and we are, Tuolumne County TUD customers are in compliance. We're beyond, we're well ahead of the curve here. That doesn't mean in the future we can't, won't be, but today we're in compliance.
So this is a good way. I don't want to end this, but if we want to continue this, what are we looking at? 2 months, 3 months from now? When's a good time for us to get back together?
That's a good question.
Well, I mean,
Quarterly sounds like
Quarterly?
probably as good as any.
Okay,
Quarterly for
good.
1 year and semi-annual thereafter. Something. I mean, you know, it can always be changed.
Till we hopefully get a solution for your funding at least. That would be nice.
It's not just
Yeah,
Jill's funding.
well, we can certainly start it quarterly, and if it's,
something in October.
if
then?
it's, if we're just rehashing stuff that we could let go to for 6 months, I mean, we can adjust it at that point, but.
Sure,
Yeah,
If something comes up,
just curious.
yeah.
no.
Did you have a comment?
Yeah, it does sound like, rather than parsing out that need thing, that TUD needs Jamestown sanitary to elevate to tertiary. Is that what is that the final, is that what TUD would like? Okay.
But I don't know if we touched on this earlier, and I don't really extend this meeting either, but tertiary's new treatment plant, Jamestown's new plant does have a component for tertiary treatment. But you don't use that portion. What percent of flow was that designed for?
It was designed for 100 GPM, and that would meet the current average dry weather flow requirements, but it was the peak flow that would cause issues. And so we have looked at that scenario where I think actually even some of the permitting documents prepared for the new general order coverage looked at, okay, what percent of time would we be able to do tertiary treatment, disinfected tertiary? There's some adjustments. I don't think they're definitely not 17 million. They're a lot less expensive that we could look at doing in the short term, but it still wouldn't, it wouldn't hit 100% production during the wet weather.
So, sounds like we're gonna have a meeting in about 3 months, right, October. I think our staff should work together on coming up with some of these alternatives, even if they're pie in the sky. I think we just throw out a handful of options. I think, we might even throw some ideas of how the chicken ranch can help. But again, you're talking to a bunch of smart people here, so I think I can give you ideas and
The Tuolumne Band probably ought to be here too, since they're involved with Tulalip and.
Yep, that's true.
And the rancher community
And the
too.
rancher community, absolutely, yeah. So. Rebecca.
Following up on Director Balin's comments, I would like to see us start working on an MOU. I know that in the past, we have had mutual agreement or mutual assistant agreements with other utilities, other wastewater treatment entities. And I know that in recent times, we've looked at a potential MOU. I think our board was talking about developing an MOU with TUD. So I would like to see that move forward even before the next 3-month meeting.
We had a meeting.
Care of the elephants and, just what a positive thing. I have a good feeling that, before we members meet again, our staff is going to be working together to try to put some of these things so that they could bring it to the boards. So thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
And, I can, meeting for for Jamestown at 12:55.
Okay, thank you, Judy. And again, thank you, everybody. I'd like to say the same thing. It's nice to get everybody here and, I mean, we got full.
I think it's
Get it
time
all
for a
over.
mutual round of applause for everything we just accomplished.
All right, and we'll go ahead and adjourn the TUD meeting as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you.